concocting a vision.
Visions cannot be concocted. Many ask us, how do I go about writing up my values? What formula do I use? There is none, of course. It must come from the market and the soul simultaneously. It must be felt passionately before it's published. People Express has had remarkable success in the face of extraordinary growth in transmitting the company's precepts. However, it is clear that the now written precepts are a passionate and market-wise expression of the implicit values that were within Don Burr when he founded the company. The precepts are sharper, but the unarticulated vision was there much earlier. A vision must always, we observe, start with a single individual. We are wary, to say the least, of committee visions. That does not mean that a major team effort of rewriting and buy-in should not ensue. It usually should. But the raw material of the effective vision is invariably the result of one man's or woman's soul-searching. Time for soul-searching can indeed be put aside, and should be. But above all, this process is not amenable to straightforward analysis and group process techniques. Finally, visions are not just for presidents. From a Ford plant in Edison, New Jersey, to a Crown Zellerback paper plant in Louisiana, we find clear and effective visions at lower levels of organizations, down to single clinics and classrooms and 5-person accounting departments. If the vision is at odds with the central view of things, executing it will be tougher, no doubt of it. However, we continually find pockets of excellence in the worst of companies and pockets of superlative performance in the best. Most are marked by a leader, found at any level, with a vision that is clear and compelling.
But there's no time to do it all.
Now here's the rub. Full-time attention to anything means, by definition, less than full-time attention to other things. Full-time attention to innovation means less attention to customers, or vice versa. The implication is clear. You can't have it all. This issue first arose when many readers interpreted the message of In Search of Excellence as meaning that the 43 exemplary companies scored perfect 10s on all 8 basics presented in the book. This, of course, is not so. IBM is awesome on customer service and a bit bureaucratic at the innovation game. Hewlett-Packard is the reverse. Procter & Gamble scores top marks on the quality of customer closeness, but has also slowed a step on innovation. And we see PepsiCo has the reverse imbalance. We find that A-plus behavior on all the key dimensions is a virtual impossibility. Moreover, even to seek A-plus behavior on all major dimensions causes confusion as to just what the real number one priority is. Seeking to get better on all dimensions is fine, but seeking unmatched multidimensional greatness is not fine. In fact, we bridle at corporate philosophy statements that say, be the best at everything. Philosophies are worse than useless if they constitute an undoable character. They become pipe dreams, or worse, a form of hypocrisy. This issue is a devilish one. You can take bits of our advice in each chapter, apply them now, and we are certain things will get better. But relative to the hoped-for towering distinction and dimension of clear uniqueness, think twice before taking on all the challenges and opportunities we present. Finally, note that either of the strategic distinctions we have discussed, customers, innovation, rests upon a bedrock of belief in the dignity and worth and creative potential of each and every person in the organization. Thus, IBM's customer-first philosophy rests upon its precept number 1, respect for the individual. Likewise, Hewlett-Packard's innovation-first philosophy rests foursquare upon the HP way of treating people.
Leadership and love.
An article in Texas Monthly magazine reported, several years ago, Trammell Crow of the real estate empire was invited to speak at the Harvard Business School. After his speech, the floor was open for questions. "What is the secret of your success?" asked one of the students. "Love," said Trammell Crow. You have to have a vision, and you have to care, passionately. During a seminar, a young man, an undergraduate at Utah State University, asked Tom Peters what he thought the most important criterion for career success might be. He clearly wanted a systematic answer. Tom turned and went to the board and wrote in 1.5-foot-high letters, one word: passion. That is, you gotta love what you do. You gotta care. J. Willard Marriott, Sr. could not have read customer complaint cards for over 55 consecutive years if he had not loved the hotel business. McDonald's Ray Kroc was serious when he said, "You've got to be able to see the beauty in a hamburger bun." All his stories are hamburger stories. Love stories about hamburgers, really. Debbie Fields, founder of the wildly successful Mrs. Fields Cookies, says, "I'm not a businesswoman. I'm a cookie person." Observe a meeting of 1,000 Tupperware distributors, men and women. They are unabashed enthusiasts. They have fun doing what they're doing. They enjoy each other's company and success. In an interview in Northwest Orient magazine, Andre Soltner of Lutece in New York, one of the world's premier restaurants, puts it this way: "I am more than 30 years a chef. I know what I am doing, and each day I do my absolute best. I cook for you from my heart, with love. It must be the same with service. The waiter must serve with love. Otherwise the food is nothing. Do you see? Many times I will leave my kitchen and go to the tables and take the orders myself. It starts right then and there. That feeling the customer must have is relaxation. If not, then his evening is ruined. Mine too, by the way. How can he love if he's not relaxed? People ask me all the time what secrets I have. I tell them there is nothing mysterious about Lutece. I put love in my cooking and love in the serving. That is all." Successful North American Tool and Die's chairman Tom Malone talked with co-author Nancy Austin. She asked him what he looks for in a prospective employee. Malone turned and asked colleague Ellie Parnelli, the office manager who makes the hiring decisions along with Malone, what she looks for. She answered without hesitation, "Someone who's a caring person." Nancy added that as Malone looked at Parnelli and nodded his agreement, his eyes filled with tears. Vince Lombardi, the Green Bay Packers' legendary coach, didn't shy away from caring either. Mental toughness is humility, simplicity, Spartanism, and one other, love. I don't necessarily have to like my associates, but as a man I must love them. Love is loyalty. Love is teamwork. Love respects the dignity of the individual. Heart power is the strength of your corporation.
Is there a certain kind of person who alone can exhibit the traits of an excellent leader?
The wonderful answer is no, or nearly so. That is, the leaders we've learned from are neither unfailingly extroverted nor unfailingly introverted. They are visionaries, but then, as Jan Carlson of SAS says, the visions are often quite garden variety. We had a vision to be the businessman's preferred airline for Europe, but everyone else has had that vision. The difference was, we executed it. Ah, there's the key. These leaders seem to pay equal attention to soaring ideals and the details of execution. Tom Peters once wrote a short column for the Wall Street Journal entitled Ideas, Plans, and Actions. It suggested that the best leaders are comfortable moving back and forth between the highest abstractions and the most mundane details. Even their language illustrates the point. They talk of vision, but invariably illustrate their visions with stories of a specific first-rank person at the retail counter, on the line, or in the podunk factory. Many leaders do see all business as show business, yet a Stanford student chided Tom severely for using that phrase. "It cheapens the whole process," he said. "Look," Tom replied, "it's not my fault. I'm using Carlson's exact words." That leads indirectly to our last point. All of life is show business. Our life, to each of us, is a spellbinding drama, and we play day in and day out the lead role. Time and again we are put upon, are not fully appreciated or loved, are misunderstood. Thus, we would argue that the specialness of great leaders is that each encourages humanness, the very essence of it, to pervade his or her organization. Each creates places to go, places to be. Commitment, passion, zest, energy, care, love, and enthusiasm can be readily expressed, and unashamedly so. And that is their distinction. If you are not quite there, getting there takes some nerve. It does mean letting go of paper control, the comfort of 10 staff reports before acting. We urge that every manager give it a shot. Start with a 2-week stint on the graveyard shift at a customer facility, or start with a graveyard shift in your own operations department. Goethe said that in order to understand the world, it's necessary to select an Eckchen, a small corner of it, for contemplation. We sorely need, in managing our enterprises, To get beyond our almost total dependence on committees, staff, reports, and rules, we need desperately to select an action, to begin to get back in touch. We need to begin to depend instead on people. The power of commitment, ownership, verve, zest, enthusiasm, celebration, and love. Take a look at your calendar. Now, are you living your proclaimed priorities when it comes to people, to quality, to innovation, to service? Have you painted out a parking spot today? Have you held a celebration? Have you eliminated at least one unnecessary rule or form? Have you responded to a customer's complaint or query? Have you shared donuts on the loading dock at 2 a.m.? If not, you're out of touch. You're not living values connected to sustainable strategic excellence, no two ways about it. And there's nothing to stop you, darn it. No capital appropriations committee is in your way. Only you stand in your way. You and the vestiges of the management theories that we and others have foisted on you in the past, proving to you that you should hunker down, call in the staff, and review yet another 600 clever overhead transparencies. We're sorry. We were wrong. Terribly wrong. But you should have known better. Now is the hour.
Small wins, debureaucratizing, and pockets of excellence.
Attention. Symbols, drama, stories, vision, and love. These are the stuff of effective leadership, much more so than formal processes or structures. But another thread needs to be pulled into this tapestry. To achieve lasting distinction, an organization must do 1,000 things just a bit better. Such a strategy leaves no choice. The 1,000 little things will come only from ownership at all levels of the organization, from the executive suite to the newest hire on the loading dock. People who feel they are part of a team feel they own the company and own their job. Consequently, they often perform 1,000% better, often many 1,000% better than the rest. Treat all people as business people, and they do become business people, or members of a team, fully involved in the bottom-line orientation of the business and committed to its success. Missing in all this is any practical suggestion on how to move methodically toward a system-wide overhaul. We have given advice on shifting calendar content, on listening to customers, on supporting good tries that end in failure. But just how do you get the whole thing started? Our answer is the small win, and a system for generating a string of small wins. And debureaucratizing. That is, consciously policing, nipping in the bud, or rolling back the excessive regulations and regulators who get in the way of ownership. Thus, these two tools constitute opposite approaches in a sense. Building winners and ownership and adding momentum on the one hand with small wins. On the other hand, keeping people from becoming losers or disenfranchised by debureaucratizing. We find that both are essential elements of either enhancement of already good performance or transformation of an unsatisfactory situation.
The small win and doability.
Above all, and this theme runs through our whole discussion of leadership, the small win is about doability. It's about tasks that can be done by real people. It's about turning the average performer into a star. Or better stated, about allowing the average performer to find there is a star within him. At the Dana Corporation, which manufactures axles, former chairman Ren McPherson's version of turning the company back over to the people who do the work was his own form of guided autonomy. McPherson hammered away on productivity, ranted and raved about it, lived it. His calendar vividly illustrated what his priority was. But he didn't tell his people what to do. In fact, he made his central staff's mission the exact opposite of what the staff's mission usually is. At Dana, staff ceased to be enforcers. They became leaders of a natural diffusion process. That is, they became people who went out on the road to find good news stories and to tell other people about them. They were not to suggest explicitly that what worked at company headquarters in Toledo ought to work in Dayton, but simply to tell the people in Dayton what happened in Toledo, and let them learn from it if they could, if it made sense in their unique setting. Now, the staff did become experts. They became experts in diffusion. They became experts in exposing people to other people's experiments. The overall point is that the natural diffusion process, albeit slow at the start, is a process that is ultimately more efficient and faster than mandating change.
Degrees of winning.
The small win theme pervades this audiobook, especially in the discussions of ownership. This is because we know of no other surefire way to generate momentum and create a winning tradition than through small wins that turn all hands into winners, and at their own pace. Winning is the key word. Almost all of us believe we're winners. Yes, almost all of us think we're very hot stuff, yet most of our organizations go out of their way to disconfirm that daily. We're not talking about a Pollyanna's worldview here. Mars Incorporated is hardly a soft company, yet every person gets a weekly 10% bonus, including the president, if he or she comes to work on time each day. And yes, it is quite an accomplishment to get up 5 mornings in a row and show up on time with the car's battery run down and the latest bout of the flu on its way. Most of the companies we think highly of proceed according to what we call a degrees of winning principle, rather than a degrees of losing one. Moderately good performance is touted.
Creating winners. Are the potential winners ready?
We hear the following time and again. Many companies are now highly centralized and autocratic. You recommend, almost without caveat, radical decentralization and greatly enhanced doses of autonomy. But isn't it true that some people aren't ready for autonomy immediately? Or ever? In other words, are people ready to become winners? There are 2 sides to the answer. The first is to acknowledge that the problem does exist. Speaking of the encouragement of numerous, sometimes duplicative product development teams at Hewlett-Packard, a division general manager says, "We can only allow the apparent chaos because of the bone-deep belief we all share in superior product quality and the way in which people should be treated." Indeed, we do find that there is little worse than creating autonomous teams willy-nilly before beliefs to guide the teams is clear. There is then a necessary order. Values first, autonomous teams second. For instance, Campbell's Soup is undertaking a radical decentralization. But before launching it, Chairman Gordon McGovern took all his senior colleagues through a lengthy and agonizing reappraisal of the company's value system, in which respect for quality stands out at the very top. The early days following the granting of enhanced autonomy, no matter how well planned, will always be marked by minor and often major glitches. However, the experience we've had with scores of people is that in almost every instance, if it's done with goodwill, the results are positive. Most managers, if they've given it an honest go, are literally shocked at the amount of responsibility that units and teams with a new sense of ownership take on, and the speed with which they take it on. Most people are responsible and are ready for more autonomy than we commonly suspect. In fact, so-called problems arise because teams do so well, making it readily apparent to the supervisor that he or she is less needed than he thought.
Getting rid of bureaucracy.
We have said that there are only 2 paths to lasting strategic dominance: constant innovation and superior customer service. Further, each is wholly dependent not upon mystical techniques, but upon ownership. That is, the creative contribution of each person in the organization. And what most gets in the way of ownership, on the loading dock, in the mail room? Unnecessary bureaucracy. So logically, inescapably, cleaning up the bureaucratic gunk must be the #1 priority. At each meeting we attend, top management promises to do something serious about it. Cut the paper by 25%, for instance. And then they direct a low-level committee to carry out this so-called prime objective. By doing so, they ensure that next year at this time, nothing will have happened. If you're going to do it, you gotta do it. Profound, eh? No ifs, ands, or buts. A Newsweek cover story illustrated this point in even the heartland of bureaucracy. General Walter Ulmer, who has no stomach for bureaucracy, reduced several feet of regulations to less than 2 inches. In the processed steel industry, Worthington Industries' John McConnell Sr. never had corporate policy manuals to begin with. As a young man working for other companies, he decided that policy books and rules restrict rather than guide. If he ever had his own company, McDonald determined to treat people the way he would have liked to have been treated as an employee. The Worthington Industries philosophy fits on one small card and reads simply, "We treat our customers, employees, investors, and suppliers as we would like to be treated." Period. Marcus Seif of Marks & Spencer began his tenure as managing director by taking a 1-year sabbatical, as he calls it. He spent the entire period, with virtually no exception, reducing the company's paperwork. He eliminated 80% of it, or he judges 27 million pages a year. Seif brought that year to a memorable close by piling the 5 tons of useless paper into a massive heap, striking a match, and hosting a company-wide bonfire.
The following are Marks and Spencer's general principles for simplifying operations.
1. Sensible approximation. The price of perfection is prohibitive. 2. Reporting by exception. That is, only when absolutely necessary. 3. Manuals. No attempt is made to legislate for every contingency and every eventuality. Before simplification, there were 13 instruction manuals, and now there are 2 small booklets. 4. Decategorization. People have been removed from watertight compartments and placed in general categories. 5. People can be trusted, so checks can be eliminated. This in turn saves time, staff, and money, and leads to increased self-confidence and a sense of responsibility among staff. Control can be effectively exercised by selective and occasional spot checks, which are usually more satisfactory and productive, and certainly less costly than a whole series of permanent control systems and continuous routine checks. A friend at Hewlett-Packard concurs, since a major body of sound psychological research has reached the conclusion that we can hold only about a half-dozen things in mind at once. Our friend insists that his assistants never use more than 5 measurement parameters when they measure something. He says, "Look, I want everyone to be a business person. That means everybody has got to understand how the business works, totally. So we only measure about a half a dozen things. People become familiar with them, can see how they interrelate, how they vary as a function of what we're up to. If some smart-aleck young analyst comes along and wants to complicate it, I say fine. 5 measures are the maximum. You want to add 2 better measures? Okay, add your 2. But then get rid of 2 existing ones. We simply won't let the total go above 5.
It takes guts to give up paper.
We have never seen a form or manual that couldn't be reduced by 50 to 75%. But it does take guts to give up the paper. Paper is a form of security, and something is lost when it's given up. Something that must be replaced by just plain trust. And it takes guts of another sort as well. A friend runs a 40-person establishment. Someone was fired, and for a while it appeared that the separated employee might file a suit, which, though frivolous, would have been expensive and time-consuming to defend. One day her lawyer sat our friend down and took her through the routine she must follow, he said, in order to avoid such eventualities in the future. It turned out that if she followed through exactly, she would have to accumulate an FBI-like dossier on each of her people. She refused flatly, because to do so would be in complete contradiction to the people-oriented philosophy behind her fine, spirited, and profitable business. I'd rather be sued and lose than become an undercover agent spying on our people. That was her conclusion and reply. And it took guts.
What gets in the way? Staff size and layers of people.
One of the regular rejoinders we get to all this is, "I'm really a good guy. We do all this Mickey Mouse only because the EEO or OSHA requires it." But the fact is that while the EEO, OSHA, and other agencies do obligate us to do some reporting, our overzealous, overstaffed middle managements tend to take a fairly simple request for a report and turn it into a 97-line requirement for information from all the company's operating units. And another fact is that you can invariably drive a Mack truck through any regulation. Yes, something is required, but it is seldom what staffers justifying their existence tell us is required. The most important deterrent to decreasing bureaucracy is often simply the layers of staff that get in the way. Moreover, worst of all, it's the layers of intelligent staff that get in the way. Smart questions can tie you up for days, we're told. There is a lot that can be said for simply cutting staff. We find so many companies that do so much better with so many fewer people. Our journey through the terrible recession of 1981 through 1983 was peppered with stories of company presidents who had cut their staffs often by up to 80%. The only noticeable difference in output, they'd tell us time and again, was better staff work. Said one informant, "I went to every management development course that came along. It seemed that each one would encourage me to add a specialist to help me with some task at which I was deficient. My dad, a wise soul who had founded the company, shook his head every time I'd add another one. Boy, was he right." We find that we're living a lot better, more effectively as well as more efficiently, without 75% of them. The other piece of improvement is fewer layers. It makes decision-making simpler and faster. But a word of warning. Right after a reduction in layers, too much will be bucked upstairs for decisions. You'll be appalled. But if you have the guts to refuse to decide, the system will soon learn that you are serious. The few illustrations we provide aren't meant to serve as specific advice, but they do suggest that there are radically different approaches to organizing, that is, more than one way to skin a cat. Mars Incorporated is a complex business, 60 divisions, almost two-thirds of its sales overseas. Divisions are allowed to compete openly with one another. Moreover, each one of those 60 divisions faces tough outside competitors. In a characteristically low-margin business, it's a clear case of a situation commonly believed to require strong centralized control. Yet somehow, Mars runs a highly profitable $6 billion enterprise with a corporate staff of just 20 officers and 20 secretaries working in a nondescript building. Or, yes, an even more extreme example is Nucor Steel, based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Chairman Ken Iverson manages to run a $552 million company with a corporate staff, including secretaries, of less than a dozen. And make no bones about it, Iverson sees his lean form as perhaps his most vital strategic weapon. He was asked a while back what he would do if he were called upon to run one of the giant steel companies. His immediate response, the biggest hurdle would not be the union. It would be the management, with its deeply ingrained method of operation. All those layers. You'd have to tear it all apart and start over again. Mars doesn't necessarily have fewer accountants per dollar of revenue. The accountants work where they can best support the company as business persons, in the plants, in the small divisions. All this is easier said than done, of course. In headquarters-focused companies, the sole objective is to reduce the number of feet between the chairman and everyone else. Most big companies, sadly, fall into this category. Decentralization works effectively only when the reward system says, to be in the boondocks is to be a winner.
Leadership and coaching.
There is no magic. Only people who find and nurture champions, dramatize company goals and direction, build skills and teams, spread irresistible enthusiasm. They are cheerleaders, coaches, storytellers, and wanderers. They encourage, excite, teach, listen, facilitate. Their actions are consistent. Only brute consistency breeds believability. They say people are special, and they treat them that way, always. You know they take their priorities seriously because they live them clearly and visibly. The trick is demonstrating to people every day where you want to take your organization. It begins with a shared understanding of purpose, made real and tangible through consistent actions. It's being amazingly consistent that counts, ignoring the charge which will be leveled that you are a broken record. Some of the brightest and best-trained managers we know miss the boat entirely on this score. Once they've said it, is their feeling. But the only thing that convinces people that you really care is unflagging consistency and commitment. Fine performance comes from people at all levels who pay close attention to their environment, communicate unshakable core values, and patiently develop the skills that will enable them to make sustained contributions to their organizations. In a word, it recasts the detached analytical manager as the dedicated, enthusiastic coach. Coaching is face-to-face leadership that pulls together people with diverse backgrounds, talents, experiences, and interests, encourages them to step up to responsibility and continued achievement, and treats them as full-scale partners and contributors. Coaching is not about memorizing techniques or devising the perfect game plan. It is about really paying attention to people, really believing them, really caring about them, really involving them. New Orleans Saints coach Bum Phillips observes, the main thing is getting people to play. When you think it's your system that's winning, you're in for a damn big surprise. It's those players' efforts. To coach is largely to facilitate, which literally means to make easy. Not less demanding, less interesting, or less intense, but less discouraging, less bound up with excessive controls and complications. A coach works tirelessly to free the team from needless restrictions on performance, even when they are self-imposed. Some of the most vital aspects of coaching are visibility, listening, limit setting, value shaping, skill stretching. To develop one's skill in these areas is not easy. It does not often come naturally and must be worked at. But oh, the rewards that can follow. Think back on your career, starting back at elementary school. Almost all of us can name a handful, but only a handful, of superior coaches, teachers, and other adults who were special people in our lives. They are the few who have contributed disproportionately to our development, almost as if they had laid a magic hand on us. They drew from within us a best that we couldn't have conceived of. Co-author Tom Peters remembers two such people. The first was Ned Harkness, who led almost anti-athletics Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute to NCAA titles in hockey and lacrosse. He became Tom's lacrosse coach at Cornell. Tom had played the sport, as all good Baltimoreans do, since age 6, yet his skill grew more under Harkness in a week or two than it had in the prior decade. Harkness knew his stuff and was technically demanding, but more important, he instinctively knew his players' limits. He pulled you to those limits and beyond, but never pushed you to discouragement. And above all, he cared. Tom's other all-star coach was Dick Anderson, captain of a Navy CB battalion to which Tom was assigned. Again, the result was the same, almost instant growth and flowering. Like Harkness, Anderson had a fine sense of limits. He pushed and nudged and occasionally ranted and raved, but just as zealously, he guarded you against a big fall and religiously avoided pushing you too far. Co-author Nancy Austin encountered her first bona fide coach shortly after her college graduation in an unlikely setting. Robert Lieberman, a research psychiatrist who ran a unique and innovative treatment center in California, was Nancy's first boss when she was a member of his research team. Bob was, above all, a superb teacher. A soft-spoken man, he never ranted or raved, but made his presence felt quietly and always supportively. He particularly urged people to reach for firsts and devoted enough time, usually daily, to make sure that the first wouldn't be the last. If a staff member doubted his or her ability to work successfully with a new patient, Lieberman would take the time to sit down with him or her and rehearse the first meeting in detail, asking questions, encouraging, nudging, listening. When the first meeting finally came, he would show up just before to offer a word or two of encouragement, and again after, to ask how things had gone, and to spend time debriefing the meeting if the staff member wanted him to. He had the gift of being around when you needed his help most, and not being around when you needed to go it on your own. We push you to examine this topic with us because of the profound effect these coaches have on our lives, and because of the profound effect that our research suggests great coaches can have on organizations as well as individuals. It may seem that coaches can have but a tiny number of charges or protégés, but surprisingly, they have the ability to affect many people.
Coaching by wandering around.
At Herman Miller, the superb office furniture company, there's a term called roving leadership. Chairman Max Dupree describes roving leaders as those indispensable people in our lives who are there when we need them. It's the ability to permit others to share ownership of problems, in effect, to take possession of a situation. It demands that we be enablers of each other. It's counting on other people to use their own special skills and competence, and then giving them enough room and enough time to do it. Coaching at its heart involves caring enough about people to take the time to build a personal relationship with them. Easy to say, tough to do. Relationships depend on contact. No contact, no relationship. The best coaches know this. They lavish time and attention on people. They also make sure people see enough of each other to impart a vital sense of continuity, momentum, and urgency, and to focus attention on the long term. They find reasons every day to get the whole team together. Armchair coaches and Monday morning quarterbacks, on the other hand, wait until the opponent has scored and only 37 seconds remain on the clock before they step in or get people together. But by then it's too late. Coaching is a real-time endeavor. Michigan assistant football coach Alex Agassi puts it this way: if you really want to advise me, do it on Saturday afternoon between 1 and 4 o'clock, and you've got 25 seconds to do it between plays. Not on Monday. I know the right thing to do on Monday. You have to be there when the games are played, and the only way to do that is to do it. Plan to spend the lion's share of your time out of your office, not behind your desk. Show up in your team's floor space. Better yet, move your desk there. That's what all Milliken bosses are encouraged, none too gently, to do. Get the whole group together often, say every day. Effective coaching means creating winners, keeping the faith in the thick of the turmoil, building momentum, finding tiny glimmers of light in the midst of darkness, building on the strength that 99 out of 100 have.
Counseling.
The counseling role at its best leads people to understand and overcome problems that get in the way of top-notch performance. It's a question of always taking the time now. Some problems turn out to be no more than small glitches and can be solved in 15 minutes. Many others will be the predictable result of incomplete information or simple misunderstanding. Others will require months of intermittent effort to unleash the potential of someone whose superior skills are shackled by an unwillingness to be a partner or team player. Counseling is overkill in all these situations. Before you take on counseling, ask yourself if the situation really calls for it. Counseling is not meddling. You have the right to counsel when, and only when, you're invited, or when performance problems threaten to undermine an individual's ability to contribute.
As we come to a close, the following is a quote from George Sand.
One is happy as a result of one's own efforts, once one knows the necessary ingredients of happiness. Simple tastes, a certain degree of courage, self-denial to a point, love of work, and above all, a clear conscience.
What price excellence?
A passion for excellence means thinking big and starting small. Excellence happens when high purpose and intense pragmatism meet. This is almost, but not quite, the whole truth. We believe a passion for excellence also carries a price, and we state it simply. The adventure of excellence is not for the faint of heart. Adventure? You bet. It's not just a job. It's a personal commitment. Whether we're looking at a billion-dollar corporation or a 3-person accounting department, we see that excellence is achieved by people who muster up the nerve and the passion to step out, in spite of doubt or fear or job description, to maintain face-to-face contact with other people, namely customers and colleagues. They won't retreat behind office doors, committees, memos, or layers of staff, knowing this is the fair bargain they make for extraordinary results. They may step out for love, because of a burning desire to be the best, to make a difference. Or perhaps, as a colleague recently explained, because the thought of being average scares the hell out of me. Doing better than average takes tenacious preparation. You need an invigorating purpose you can call your own, one you care enough about to justify investing your steadfast interest, one that, we hope, makes you happy, because you'll live with it day in and day out. It has to be worth your full attention. It has to be worth the time and effort it takes to master the basics and be diligent on the details, the little things that prove yours is an environment where things happen, where the only thing you like as well as listening is acting without delay, where people are committed to finding a few more ways to get things done the way they want them to be done. The good news? You can start now. The bad news? You'll never finish. Courage and self-respect are the lion's share of passion. It's hanging in long after others have gotten bored or given up. Passion opens you to criticism, disappointment, disillusionment, and failure, any one of which is enough to scare off all but the bravest souls. But the passionate, courageous, self-respecting people we know regard challenges or risks as something to be faced. Passion doesn't have to be flashy. Garden variety, everyday passion is the stuff of excellence, the sort of stuff you need when you face the prospect of managing by wandering around, for instance. There you are, a regular person, stepping out from behind your desk where it's safe. You have to believe that the stepping out is worth the trouble. We don't pretend that it's easy. It takes real courage to step out and stake your claim. But we think the renewed sense of purpose, of making a difference, of recovered self-respect, is well worth the price of admission.
This has been a Random House Audio Books presentation. So what's to be done about problems with quality?
What do you do if you haven't sold or designed or made or serviced the product or delivered the service in quality acceptable or superior modes? Our advice is at once very pragmatic and very abstract. The pragmatic? Get back in touch. MBWA, period. And lots of it. Start now, whether you're chairman or accounting supervisor or assistant sanitation department head in a town of 19,000. Learn if you can to trust your gut, to respect passion and enthusiasm and pride. What do you feel for your product or service? There's no winning, no hope of constant improvement for you or your people unless there is involvement. You must love what you do, or else excellence remains an elusive target. So measure it by all means. Reward it. Celebrate it. That love will be readily transmitted. So will the absence of love be transmitted, sad to say. There is no other route.
Innovation, the mythology of innovation, or a skunkworks tale.
Remember our definition of skunks? Skunks are innovative business leaders. The real world of innovating is serendipitous and passion-filled, whether the object is a new banking service or a pharmaceutical miracle. Managing innovation involves MBWA, paying attention to innovation, talking it up, wandering the design areas, and celebrating the emergence, and sometimes the failures, of the champions we call skunks. This must be done in a 10-person accounting department or a sluggish $10 billion science-driven company. We ask you to sit back and kick up your feet on a table before delving into this innovation section. The previous section about customers may well have elicited an aha common sense. Innovation will be a tougher take. Restrain the oddballs has been conventional wisdom for so long that it may be tough to come to grips with the central message here. Skunks and skunk works are a must, not a luxury, if constant innovation is truly sought. Post-it notepads have become a staple in the American office, and a $200 million winner for 3M. The notion originated with Art Fry, a 3M employee who sang in a choir. The bits of paper he used to mark the hymns kept falling out of the books, and he yearned for an adhesive-backed paper that would stick as long as necessary, but would leave no trace when removed. From the labs of 3M, the home of Scotch tape, a prototype soon became available. Great success story, you say? Not quite yet. Major office supply distributors thought it was silly. Market surveys were negative. But 3M executives and secretaries got hooked once they actually used the little notes. The eventual breakthrough came with a mailing of samples to the secretaries of the CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies, under the letterhead of the secretary of the chairman of 3M, Lou Lair. What was the time lapse between the germ of the idea and its commercial fruition? Almost a dozen years. This anecdote would amount to little more than just a charming story, were it not similar to stories from Citicorp and Bell Labs, from companies making jet engines or computers, from Surgeon centers and accounting firms. The course of innovation, from the generation of the idea through prototype development and contact with the initial user to breakthrough and then to final market, is highly uncertain. Moreover, it is always messy, unpredictable, and very much affected by the determined champions, and that is an important point. It's important because we must learn to design organizations that take into account explicitly the irreducible sloppiness of the process and take advantage of it, rather than systems and organizations that attempt to fight it. Unfortunately, most innovation management practice appears to be predicated on the implicit assumption that we can beat the sloppiness out of the process, if only we can make the plans tidier and the teams better organized. Experiments and skunk works, the zeal of champions, the power gained from exploiting the innovative user as partner are thought of as fit only for those who aren't smart enough to think far enough ahead and plan wisely enough. As a friend at General Electric says, when you go through this inordinately messy, sloppy, fouled-up, mucked-up 7-year process of bringing a new product to market, you say to yourself at the end, any idiot could have done it better than that. Let's get organized for the next round. And in that single phrase, let's get organized for the next round, lie the seeds of subsequent disaster. It is a messy world. We hope to demonstrate that. If it is a messy world, the only way to proceed is by constant experimentation, by the attitude, don't just stand there, do something. If constant experimentation is the only antidote to a messy world, then we need experimenters, or the champions that we call skunks. And if we need champions, we must realize that the most effective environment for champions is almost always an abundance of skunk works, those small, offline bands of mavericks that are the hallmark of innovative organizations. Finally, and this is the $64,000 issue, if the messy world experiment champion skunk work paradigm makes sense, then we need to create a climate that nurtures and makes heroes of experimenters and champions. Innovative companies tend to be innovative from stem to stern. Hewlett-Packard is innovative in the new product area. It encourages skunking to an extreme degree. But you find just about as much skunking going on as well in management information systems, personnel, and the factory. A Hewlett-Packard employee described an occasion when engineering had developed an unwieldy design for a major board. When it got to the factory, one of the manufacturing people realized the incipient problems. His idea? To go off on a brief after-hours bootleg project and build it differently. His boss's response? Essentially a wink. The complex design failed in the real world of the factory. But the general tendency to bootleg at HP meant that a better design was instantly available from the wings. Cheating, disrespect, praising failure, creating heroes out of rule breakers. The managerial and leadership test implied by all this is not an easy one. As one manager said, it's a thin line between discipline and chaos. But that's what we get paid for.
Just how do you know when your company smells of innovation?
Here are just a few aspects of those organizations that truly foster innovation. 1. Inaction is not tolerated, period. Managers at all levels look harshly askance at phrases like these. We need more staffing. We need more data. Form a committee to look into it. The most common question is, what have you gotten done in the last 24 to 48 hours? 2. Try. Test. Quick and dirty are much more common comments than, let's get a group together to analyze this, or let's not be too hasty. 3. Failure is not only tolerated, but learned from. We really got caught with our pants down, but it looks like we learned A, B, and C. Can we get back to them with a reworked design tomorrow? Is a typical comment in response to failure. The company openly supports good tries that fail. 4. Failures are well-known parts of the background of the star performers, those who've been promoted several times. They talk openly and regularly about their biggest embarrassment. 5. Despite an avowed tolerance for a bit of eccentricity, practical team playing is revered. That is, the champions are seen as people who despised corporate politics, policies, and staffs, yet were marvels at practical coordination. And they are seen as having a masterly ability to recruit top-flight teams and to cadge time and space and other resources from all parts of the organization to work on their exciting project. 6. Invention with customers is considered normal. People outside the sales marketing area are encouraged to engage directly in creative customer contact, and customers are regular members of problem-solving teams. 7. Innovation for innovation's sake is to some degree rewarded at all levels and in all functions. Regular celebrations are held for people who create something new or who break time-honored rules or traditions to enhance their performance creatively. 8. The physical layout everywhere encourages change and informal communication, especially cross-functional communication. Teams are readily formed, then immediately given team space. 9. It is considered normal and almost required for all hands, especially designers, buyers, brand managers, lending officers, and engineers, to devote 10 to 20% of their time to bootleg projects. Moreover, the boss consciously and regularly rewards clever bootleggers. 10. Most stories told to newly hired people or related by senior management focus on somewhat crazy champions, bootlegging, scrounging resources, getting semi-illicit help from other functions, providing semi-illicit help to other functions. The stories paint the average manager as a bit of a rascal. 11. Quick-hit, small-team, spur-of-the-moment activity is seen as the normal problem-solving mode, as opposed to throw resources at it. 12. Senior and middle managers repeatedly show open disrespect for their own procedures and structures, regularly encouraging others to subvert the rules. 13. When news of an incipient skunk work surfaces, the knee-jerk tendency is to wink or smile rather than to cut it off at the knees. 14. Well over half of top management has one or more painful, innovative successes in their background. That is, top management and innovation go together. And finally, 15. The company smells of its products. Bragging, display, and demonstration in every nook and cranny is endemic. As in our discussion of the smell of the customer, we do not suggest that all top-flight innovators exhibit all these traits with equal vigor, but this list will help you make a frank assessment of the innovativeness of any organization. Neither the smell of the customer nor the smell of innovation have anything to do with a grand design. They have to do with 1,000 tiny things done a little bit better, serving the customer courteously, honorably, and with distinction, inducing the champion or skunk within almost all of us to come to the fore. To achieve distinction on either of these dimensions, then, requires not sleight of hand by geniuses, but the commitment to excellence by everyone. In short, people are the unmistakable base.
People and the enthusiasm factor.
We have a secret hypothesis, and it's one that we don't wish to test, since there's a good chance that we're wrong. The hypothesis is that over the entrance to the Harvard Business School, or the business school of your choice, there's a giant stone lintel. Deeply inscribed in the granite are the following lines. All ye who enter here shall never smile again. American business is damned serious stuff. And yet, time and again, the evidence is that winners are people who have fun and who produce results as a result of their zest. We've seen some extravaganzas in the way of celebrations. We've attended a Tupperware celebration and a celebration of the IBM Golden Circle, which honors the top 3% of its sales force. We've seen the film footage of Mary Kay's galas for her top saleswomen. Talk about shows. The Limited Stores has a doozer, too, in a class with the best. It has an annual celebration for its top 100 store managers. They are invited to the annual President's Club meeting in Vail, Colorado. The highlight is the presentation of awards. The 100 managers to be honored are brought to the top of a mountain on a ski lift. There, at the mountaintop, the awards ceremony takes place, with video cameras recording every second of it. A memorable occasion, to put it mildly. And the film? It's set around the entire Limited Stores system. Think big. We talked about the Scandinavian air system and its remarkable turnaround. In the middle of the 1981 through 1983 recession that clobbered most airlines, Scandinavian air system went from losing $10 million a year to making $70 million a year on over $2 billion in sales. What a prize SAS CEO Jan Carlson gave his people. At Christmas in 1982, all 16,000 employees received a gold watch. Moreover, there was a lavish blowout in 3 countries, since SAS is owned by Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. There were several thousand people at each party. A ride home in a private limousine was provided to each person at the end of the night. That's a celebration. Think big, even if you're small. Oxford Software is a $10 million company based in New Jersey. It had a lot of growth, a lot of profit, and passed the big hurdle of the $10 million mark in 1983. In January 1984, Chairman Judd Shanker decided to celebrate. He took all 125 employees, that's right, including the clerks from the mailroom, to Acapulco for 4 fun-filled days. Memorable. We've come to label these celebrations, both small and large, the technology of enthusiasm, and we chose the word technology for a particular reason. When it comes to production or backroom operations, we're capable of analyzing problems thoughtfully. When it comes to marketing, we can, quick as a wink, generate analyses by the ton. But when we talk about rewarding, enthusiasm, celebrating, and the like, the eyes usually glaze over. What we're suggesting is that you can be just as thoughtful, just as meticulous and systematic in developing programs that substantially boost the enthusiasm in your organization, as you are when you test market your new widget. The Rohm Corporation, recently acquired by IBM, has been a remarkably profitable and fast-growing company, successfully challenging the giant AT&T in the switchboard market. A Rohm officer put it this way: the leader is not a devil's advocate. He is a cheerleader. Cheerleader indeed. Cheerleading is not merely legitimate. It's at the core of most successful organizations. It always has been. We've noticed it in sports teams and the like since we were kids. Now let's apply it, as have the best, to business and other organizations.
Leadership. Leadership is characterized by attention, symbols, drama, vision, and love.
All business is show business. Those words were uttered by Jan Carlson of SAS. We agree. All business is show business. That doesn't mean tap dancing. It means shaping values, symbolizing attention, and it is the opposite of administration, and especially professional management. As we said at the beginning of this audio book, for the last 25 years we have carried around with us the model of manager as cop, referee, devil's advocate, dispassionate analyst, professional decision-maker, naysayer, pronouncer. The alternative we now propose is leader, not manager, as cheerleader, enthusiast, nurturer of champions, hero finder, wanderer, dramatist, coach, facilitator, builder. It's not a model of what might be, or a prescription for the impossible. We've learned it in real time from people who've done it in glamour industries, and from those who've won in extremely adverse situations, in low-growth or no-growth industries, or the public sector. We've learned it from all those who've shared their lives and work with us over the years. From all these people, we've learned nothing about magic. We've learned instead of passion, care, intensity, consistency, attention, drama, and the implicit and explicit use of symbols. In short, we've learned of leadership. We're coming out of a 25-year period during which managers were said to be powerless, confounded by multiple stakeholders, multiple constituencies, uncontrollable external forces, and trapped in the middle. We think this is nonsense. The manager is shockingly powerful. Remember when you were a 19-year-old on your first job? You darn well knew what your manager ate and when his eating habits changed. You were a manager watcher par excellence. We all were. Managers are powerful. People pay attention to the obsessions, or lack of them, of managers. We think our colleague Bob Waterman said it first. Attention is all there is. Attention is all there is. Milliken & Company has long been way ahead of the pack, even the Japanese, in the manufacturing technology of textiles. The source of their prowess? Here's an example. Once every 3 or 4 years, there's a show of textile machinery from all over the world. In 1984, it was in Milan, Italy. The average sizable company sent 4 or 5 people for 3 or 4 days. Chairman Roger Milliken sent 150 of his people for the full 10 days. He accompanied them. At the end of each long day of wandering the floors, they had a 3 or 4 hour meeting that usually lasted way past midnight to swap ideas. Roger Milliken wouldn't misspend a single penny knowingly. He's hardly extravagant. Yet he is extravagant when it comes to his strategic obsession, keeping Milliken's plants at or ahead of the state-of-the-art. Sam Walton has accumulated a personal fortune well in excess of $2 billion, while boosting the Walmart Corporation from $40 million to over $6 billion in a decade. He thinks retailing is all about stores, an almost novel idea in the systems and merchandising-dominated 1980s. Years ago, Mr. Walton began making a point of visiting every one of his stores at least once a year. That was when he had only 18. The number by early 1985 was close to 750, and he was still visiting each one at least once a year. And hitchhiking with Walmart trucks across the country, greeting each store manager and spouse by name at annual meetings, wandering down to share donuts at 2 a.m. with his people in the distribution centers. Do the store people know he's interested? You bet. Bill Hewlett constantly wandered the engineering spaces at Hewlett-Packard, as did Barney Oliver, his head of R&D for 40 years. Today, though neither is any longer on active duty, a 24-year-old student at the Stanford Business School doing an internship at Hewlett-Packard can still say, "Believe me, each and every one of the 80,000 people on the payroll thinks that Bill or Barney is likely to stop by our desk any minute and ask about the prototype we're working on." Absurd, but repeated time and again in other places. The McDonald's franchisees expected Ray Kroc within the hour, even when they knew he was in the hospital. The authors of the book Corporate Cultures tell a story about Jack Welch, chairman of the General Electric Corporation. When Welch was an up-and-coming group executive, he had a special telephone installed in his office with a private number, which was made available to all the purchasing agents in his group. If an agent ever got a price concession from a vendor, he could phone Welch and the call would come in on his telephone. Whether he was making $1 million deal or chatting with his secretary, Welsh would interrupt what he was doing, take the call, and say, "That's wonderful news. You just knocked a nickel per ton off the price of steel." Then, straight away, he'd sit down and scribble out a congratulatory note to the agent. But Welsh not only made himself a hero by the symbolic act, he also transformed each and every purchasing agent into a hero, too. Welsh could have attacked the problem of high costs in a number of ways. He could have appointed a task force to study the problem and come up with solutions, or he could have hired consultants to do the same. Or he could have reassigned his best managers to head up the purchasing function. What he chose to do was install a telephone in his office. Suppose no one called. Suppose people called, but the impact on purchasing costs was negligible. It took courage to pursue such an unconventional, culture-reinforcing approach to the problem, the courage to trust others to do the right thing. Extraordinarily successful Seattle Seahawk coach Chuck Knox would doubtless identify with the Welsh story. A large part of the improved Seahawk performance between 1982 and 1984 was a result of moving from the bottom of the heap to the top in turnover ratio. That is, they used to lose many more fumbles than they took from opponents, and have many more passes intercepted than they intercepted. In a late 1984 TV interview, Knox gave what was, in his view, a prime reason for the shift. "I began starting every practice with a 5-minute drill on some aspect of turnovers. I just wanted them to focus each and every day on the importance of the turnover. Just 5 minutes, but constant and upfront. Repetition. That is, attention." Tom Peters spent an exciting day with Kelly Johnson, founder of the original Skunk Works at Lockheed. Beyond the imposing outcomes that Johnson achieved lies an even more impressive story. In our rather extensive experience with big development projects, we've found that the major development issue is invariably manufacturing scale-up. That's a semi-technical way of saying that the engineers seldom if ever talk to the manufacturers, and vice versa. So Tom asked, "Mr. Johnson, how did you beat the manufacturing scale-up issue? How did you get the manufacturers to talk to the engineers?" His response, "What problem?" "Well, sir," Tom began, "in every other company we know it's a major problem." "It's not a big thing," he said. "At about 6:30 a.m. most every morning, I'd get the manufacturing supervisors together and let them moan about what the engineers had done to them during the last 24 hours. Then at 7 a.m., I'd get all the engineering gang together and let them jaw about what the manufacturers had done to them. At 7:30, for about a half an hour, no more, we'd get them all together, decide what the problems were and what we'd do about them now." He concluded, "If you do that sort of thing 5 or 6 days a week, 50 or so weeks a year, for 40 years, all those problems you talk about go away." Indeed. We were once called in to work with a company that was having a terrible problem. The chairman was determined to enhance entrepreneurship, but the message was not getting through. As consultants, we spent a lot of the chairman's money reanalyzing his strategy, checking his structure and job descriptions, and dissecting each one of his business subsystems. They all looked great, aimed at the right target. Out of sheer desperation, we looked at the only other thing we could think of left to look at, his calendar, the way he spent his time. We looked at the meetings he attended, and did a detailed content analysis of the agenda over a period of several months. We looked at the visits he made, and the people he talked to, and the order in which he talked to them while at a site. He was even kind enough, or brave enough, to allow us to run a phone log on him for several months. The net? He was Mr. Entrepreneurship in the speeches he made on the 4th of July. But he spent barely 3% of his total time on his presumed objective, entrepreneurship activities. His attention wasn't there, and his people knew it. Again, you are what you pay attention to. Another project with a major construction company revealed a similar problem, one that was amenable to an obvious solution. The company, which was run by engineers who liked to talk about engineering problems, had gotten badly overextended in new overseas areas. Yet a detailed minute-by-minute analysis of the agendas of top management's weekly meetings suggested that about 80% of their time was spent not talking about overseas implementation issues, but about the nuts and bolts of the engineering problems, with which they felt more familiar. Over a 12-month period, meeting agendas were shifted until 70% of management's attention was focused on implementation. And things changed radically.
But how does change come about?
First, and not so obvious, It's a matter of the quantity of attention paid to the matter rather than the quality, odd as that statement may sound. When the senior folks start to focus on a new objective, then the rest of the organization starts to pay attention to it. And what gets attended to gets done. Thus, if you want to focus on quality, period.
You mean start giving quality some time and attention?
Right. If you haven't focused on quality very much before, you won't know exactly what to talk about at first. Conversations will drag, will be abstract. It doesn't matter a whit. Everybody will eventually get the drift, that you're focused on quality. They will also get the message that you're not focused on some other priority, an equally important message. It doesn't have to be a good conversation about quality, just a conversation about quality. In some fashion, pay significant attention to a problem, and somehow the frequency rate of that problem goes down. Not because of the specific program you invented, but because of the energy that comes to be focused on it.
Giving something attention is symbolic behavior.
Symbolic it is, but don't let that word symbolic turn you off. Symbols, like paying attention, are the only tools that a manager who doesn't drive a forklift has. Symbolic attention, symbolic of our concern and our priority, results in others becoming engaged in the same issues. Mars Incorporated executives make a fetish of physically attaching every administrative facility to a factory, furnishing the facilities in Spartan fashion, prominently displaying next to the desk the white coats that are to be worn without fail into the factory. Truth be told, those few dozen white coats don't really have a whole lot to do with either the spotlessness of the factory or the Mars quality record. Yet they have everything to do with it. They make it crystal clear what the primary concerns of top management are. Experts agree that the only thing that distinguishes mankind from the rest of the planet's creatures is our use of language and reasoning power. In other words, the use that man makes of symbols. Leadership is symbolic behavior, whether you're talking about Martin Luther King's trek to Selma, Alabama, or Jack Welch's special phone for purchasing agents. And that's all it is. Not because symbols constitute a good variable to manage, but because they're the only variable we have at our command, whether or not we recognize it as such. Now, this is at once a very good news story and a very bad news story. Good news because it doesn't involve capital spending. Bad news because every minute is a symbolic opportunity. Symbols cost nothing, but you're on duty for opportunity to use them all the time. Ah, but how rich is that open door of opportunity, and you can choose to grasp it or let it slip away. It all adds up to this. Every system, every seating arrangement, every visit is symbolic behavior. Got a problem? Symbolize your concern by paying obsessive attention to it, in a straightforward, no shortcuts fashion. Put time into it, and into all appropriate players, year in and year out, decade in and decade out. The remarkable cleanliness of Disney's theme parks is merely a matter of a lot of people trying to do cleanliness better. The secret is they don't sell gum in the parks. Disney is 1,000 people dreaming up 1,000 no-gum ideas.
And that leads us to our next subject, symbol management and the leader as dramatist.
Each symbol-using activity is a mini-drama. 1 month before Ren Zafiropoulos became president of Xerox's Information Products Division, he made his first appearance before the 300 assembled members of his new management team. His number one priority in this opening speech? To make the point that there would be no unnecessary distinctions among individuals in the division. There would be none of those petty privileges that damage the sense of self-worth of those who do not have them, and affect their personal dignity. In this spirit, Ren directed that in each of the 3 facilities of the division, all reserved parking spaces be painted out. By the time he actually took over, each and every one of the executive parking spaces was gone. Symbolism? You bet. Strategy in action? You'd better believe it. General Bill Creech was the architect of a remarkable turnaround at the U.S. Air Force's Tactical Air Command. In 1978, when Creech took over, it took about 4 hours to get a part to a temporarily inoperable plane. In 1984, the average time was 8 minutes. Creech has a superb sense of symbols and the dramatic. On an inspection visit soon after he arrived at TAC, he came across a supply office in disrepair, the epitome of the second-class status to which supply people had been relegated. The supply sergeant, a 15-year veteran, occupied a government gray chair with a torn back that was mended with electrical tape and only 3 casters. The 4th leg was propped up on a block of wood. Creech ordered his aide to have the chair boxed and sent to Tax Langley, Virginia headquarters. Soon thereafter, Creech, a 4-star general, held a major ceremony. The 3-star general who headed logistics was awarded the chair and told that it was now his chair until the supply operation was cleaned up. An executive came to us after a meeting with a McDonald's competitor. He had worked at McDonald's for quite a while some years back and remembered a time when founder Ray Kroc had gotten irritated because his crew chiefs weren't, in his opinion, spending enough time out at the counter with the customers. He sent an order around. It was a while back, you know, when the tables and chairs were wooden. The order was to be executed immediately. Saw the back off each manager's chair. Ray figured that might keep them a little less comfortable while desk sitting. Apocryphal or not, it's a tale that reveals the importance of keeping in touch at McDonald's, and it's still told, pointedly, today.
Here are more leaders who know how to use symbols and drama.
A Nordstrom brother was out on one of his regular store inspection tours. He visited a shoe department. Wandering into the back room, he noted that there were lots of gaps along the shelves. He asked the clerk why the gaps were there. "Don't worry," the young man replied. "I've got them on order." He produced the order forms as proof. Nordstrom picked up the order forms, rolled each one up carefully, walked over to the back room shelves, and placed the appropriate forms in the empty spaces. "Why don't you wrap these forms around the customer's feet if they ask for the out-of-stock items?" he said, and walked out. That night after work, the young man raced to the nearest warehouse to pick up replenishment stock. The symbolic story lives on today. Entrepreneurship can also be spurred by symbols. GE was singled out as the paragon of strategic thinking for 15 years, the entire history of the high-visibility strategy movement, in fact. We noted earlier that when Jack Welch became chairman, one of the first things he did was to dismantle much of the strategic planning staff. Welch hadn't given up on strategic thinking. Rather, he sent it back to where it belongs, to the strategic business units and divisions. In addition to breaking up the central staff, he accomplished a major symbolic change in the location of strategy review, which used to be full-dress affairs held in corporate headquarters in Fairfield, Connecticut. The staffs were invariably the heroes of the hour. Welch simply moved the strategic reviews to the field. Immediately, the heroes were making their case on their turf. Small point? No. A big one.
Drama. Real-life drama. Set your mind in that direction.
Domino's Pizza is the #2 pizza company in the United States, behind PepsiCo's Pizza Hut. It lives by and owes its phenomenal success to its 30-minute maximum "we deliver anywhere" pledge. Therefore, and logically enough, Domino's Pizza Distribution Company, supplier of ingredients and equipment to Domino's franchises, must never allow a franchise to run out of dough. Shutting a store down is a #1 sin. It nearly happened a while back, and distribution president Don Volchek got a call telling him about the probable disaster. His ready response, "Charter a plane. Get it there." Charter they did. Get it there they did. And this in a low-margin business, mind you. In another instance, Volchek's lieutenant, irrepressible young Jeff Smith, did have a store shut down for lack of dough. He went out and bought 1,000 black armbands, and his whole team wore them in mourning for quite a time afterwards. The message at Domino's is clear and memorable. From time to time we get rebuttals to the Domino's plane charter story. But you can't afford to deliver the average load of dough by plane. Of course not. And indeed, Volchek had to make up the charter fee by cutting back somewhere else to meet his profit targets. The point is that the story transmits graphic evidence about exactly what comes first, what the tiebreaker is, about just how far you must go to live the chief strategic value of the institution. And if you have to go so far as to charter a plane, you're saddled with the issue of how to find the money. But at the time of the decision, the story teaches, think customer first, budget second.
And some more stories of fun and profit and leadership.
In talking of Domino's Pizza, we have introduced the role of stories. There's a lot of psychological literature that we could bring to bear on our discussion of this. But this much we know, that human beings reason largely by means of stories, not by mounds of data. Stories are memorable. stories about real people doing real things. A former Mars company manager recounts this tale, which for him is as fresh as if it happened yesterday. Forrest Mars was visiting a chocolate factory in midsummer. He went up to the third floor where the biggest chocolate machines were placed. It was hotter than the hinges of hell. He asked the factory manager, "How come you don't have air conditioning up here?" The factory manager replied that it wasn't in his budget, and he darn well had to make budget. While Mr. Mars allowed as how that was a fact, that the fellow had to make budget, he nonetheless went to a nearby phone, dialed the maintenance people downstairs, and asked them to come up immediately. He told them, "While we wait here, would you please go downstairs and get all of the factory manager's furniture and other things from his office and bring them up here? Sit them next to the big chocolate machine, please." The manager figured out it was a good idea to air condition the factory sooner rather than later. Mr. Mars told him that once that was completed, he could move back to his office any time he wanted.
Stories are memorable. They teach. And they're a darn sight more efficient than policy manuals.
A Procter & Gamble manufacturing manager remembers a call in the middle of the night. It came from a district sales manager soon after this fellow had become a manager. "George, you've got a problem with a bar of soap down here." Down here, George explains, was 300 miles away. "George, think you could get down here by 6:30 this morning?" George realized it was something more than an invitation. And he concludes, "After you've finished your first 300-mile ride through the back hills of Tennessee at 70 miles an hour to look at one damn 34-cent bar of soap, you understand that Procter & Gamble Company is very, very serious about product quality. You don't need a detailed 200-page manual to prove it to you." We suspect this story is the truth or close to it. The point is, our friend George believes it. He repeats it. It lives. And if P&G were not living the quality message day in and day out, such stories would either not exist or not be regularly transmitted. The values of any organization live most humanly through stories, pictures. If we are serious about ideals, values, motivation, commitment, we will pay attention to stories, myths, and pictures of our vision. Bill Moore of Recognition Equipment calls it seeing the glory.
Preaching the vision.
Attention, symbols, drama and stories, the nuts and bolts of leadership. More is called for than technique. You have to know where you're going to be able to state it clearly and concisely, and you have to care about it passionately. That all adds up to vision, the concise picture of where the company and its people are heading and why they should be proud of it. The elements of a successful vision, we believe, lurk in what we have said about customers, innovation, and people. And what we have said should be tailored by you to fit your organization's specific circumstances. The issue here, in our discussion of leadership, is not, then, the substance of the vision, but the importance of having one per se, and the importance of communicating it consistently and with fervor. Bill Moore took on the presidency of Recognition Equipment when it was near death's door. In just a couple of years, he turned it around. In an interview published in the Electronic Engineering Times, Moore speaks eloquently on leadership. The leader's got to have vision of where he plans to take the company. He has to be able to dramatize that vision for his organization. If there is one role the CEO should play, it is that of chief salesman. Too often a chief executive hesitates to get up and perform the role of cheerleader or stem winder. Simple and direct communication should be the watchword. When you get caught up in the planning fetish, you make the business much too complicated for the average person to understand. Moore continues. As most of us know, it's rare that one can ask the question, "What are you trying to do in this company?" and get the same answer from the guy on the production end that you get from the guy in marketing. But if you keep it simple and direct, you have a chance to achieve that consistent understanding. I think we'd all be better off if we spent more time articulating our corporate plans and less time on perfecting them. Well put. Vision, then, comes first. General Walter Ulmer, unconventional and highly effective U.S. Army combat commander, said, "The essence of a general's job is to assist in developing a clear sense of purpose, to keep the junk from getting in the way of important things." CEO Bert Snyder of Bourne's, a profitable mid-sized instrument maker, put it this way: "The CEO's prime task is teaching his people what the company is all about, and then getting them to teach their people." It seems that a lot of CEOs don't appear to have a clear vision of what their company is about. All the ruckus about strategic planning can be reduced to a very simple idea, knowing exactly what you want to do with your company. Then you convey that. Even if you're small, vision and the teaching of it comes first. Hamburger University, Dana University, Disney University. When we think of the top corporate training schools, we think of unabashed culture shaping. Yet, Apple opened Apple University at an early date. They wanted to teach the Apple values and Apple's special brand of enthusiasm on their own turf, in their own way. Scandinavian Design is modest in size, but it is an immodestly successful retailer of furniture. The company launched Scandinavian Design University early in its history. The objective of the school is to unabashedly teach the company's culture and generate enthusiasm. Stage direction, lighting, theatrics, excitement. It's the way we do things, they say. The successful visions are also realistic, within grasp. The most effective leaders from all walks of life have set down challenging but achievable visions. Nothing is more demoralizing and ultimately useless than an unachievable vision.